Hi everyone, in this video we'll learn how to handle flaky behavior in API testing. So when I say flaky test, they are tests that will pass sometimes and it will fail sometimes, even though there is no change in the code or there is no change in the environment. Let's say for example, I have my get pet request which is pointing to the resource at v2/pet/1. So initially now if you see this, my assertion that I have put in the request has been failed because it is not retrieving the ID or the category. Now let's try to run it again. It's still failing. So third time when I ran, it is passing. So my assertions are passing because it has retrieved an ID value and it has also retrieved the category value. So these are the flaky test behavior. And what we will do in this video is we'll try to create a script which could retry this mechanism where it automatically retries the failed step to a specified number of times before marking it as failure. So what we'll have now is we'll create a Groovy script. So what I did is test step, add step, and I'm creating a Groovy script. So inside my Groovy script, first we'll try to define the test step we want to retry. So for that, I'm going to use a variable called step name, and in my step name you will have to give the step which you wanted to retry, which is going to be get pet request. Mention the name correctly. So you can replace this name with the request name that you are trying to perform the retry mechanism. So in mine, I wanted to try the retry for my get pet request. Hence, I've mentioned the name as get pet request. So next, what we'll have to do is we'll have to retrieve the test step object using its name. So for that, we'll need another variable, which is test step. And this one needs to retrieve the object using a name. So call the test runner dot test case dot get test step by name. So from the previous step, pick your step name and pass that as your parameter. So by this step, you're going to interact with the step name called get pet request. So now that we have defined our test step, second what we'll have to do is we'll have to handle this retry mechanism, and for that we will need three more parameters. I'm going to name them as maximum retries. Let's keep it as 3. Second, I will need a variable called attempt. Initially, I'm going to begin with 0 and another variable to track whether the request has received valid response or not. So that variable name is going to be success and I'm going to initialize it to false. So this variable to track how many times I'm going to run this retry mechanism. So I'm going to try to run the retry for 3 times. So I've initialized it to 3 and the attempt is going to be 0. So this is going to be a counter which is going to track the current attempt. And third, a flag which will check whether the step is going to be passed or not. The third thing what we'll have to do is we'll have to create a while loop that will run as long as the number of attempts is lesser than the maximum retry and the test step has not passed yet. So initially it is going to be false. So that is going to be our condition. Your test step is not passed and it needs to be, the number of attempts needs to be lesser than the maximum retry. So in Groovy, what we'll do is use a while loop, use your attempt variable needs to be lesser than max retry and it should not be success, which means put a not and call the success variable. So as long as this condition is met, the statements inside this loop needs to be executed. So initially my attempt is going to be 0. So when this condition is going to be true, my attempt is going to be incremented. Let's use a logger to say info as executing test step, call your variable step name and attempt variable. So inside this loop, what we'll be doing is we'll be trying to execute the test step. We'll be executing this step and check for the assertions. So let's use another variable called test result step result. We'll need to run the test step, call the run method and pass test runner comma context. So this step will run the test step. So we are running this test step and we'll be storing this result in the test step result variable. After the execution, we'll check the assertions to determine if the test step has been passed or failed. So for example, my assertion that I have added to my request, if this is going to be valid or not, is going to be checked in this step. So the result is going to be saved in this, stored in that. Next, what we will need is we'll need to retrieve the number of assertions that you have passed in the request step that you're trying to check. So for that, what we will need is we'll need another variable called assertion, and this assertion variable is going to retrieve the list of all the assertions. So there is a method for that, which is going to be called with test step dot get assert assertion list. So this is going to retrieve you a list variable, which is going to be stored in your assertions variable. What I'll do is I'll try to now change my success flag to true. So initially when I'm trying to retrieve it, I'm making the success value as true. And after that, what we'll do is we'll use a for each loop and try to get the name of the assertion and its status. So for that, I'll use assertions dot each and use another variable for assertion and an operator for each operator. And inside that, use your assertion status variable to call your individual status. So assertion dot get status. We can always print what we are trying to retrieve. So let's put another print statement and add your own custom message. Here we'll print like assertion and we'll call assertion dot get name method to show the name of your assertion. And your second thing is going to be your assertion status, which I'll put here, and I'll also change this thing to status. So we are trying to collect the list of assertion, and for the assertion that we have taken, we're using a for loop iteration. And for the individual assertion inside your list, you're trying to get the name and its status. It is not a curly brace, it's a curly brace. Next, we'll try to check whether the status that we have retrieved from your individual assertions present in your request is going to be passed or failed. So for that, I'll add an if condition to check my assertion status. So use this variable and toString method. If this is going to be matching failed, we'll need to put log error test step, mention the step that has failed. So the test step name and where it has failed, your attempt variable because of or due to this name, and use a double quote to print your error message. And now you try to set the success variable equals to false. So if any assertion is going to fail, we will set this success to false and we will be logging an error. And close your while loop. So now here we are trying to check our assertions and we're checking its valid status. And if it is going to be failed, we are reporting an error and we are trying to print it inside your while loop. And then what we'll have to do is we'll also have to handle the retrying logic. And how we will be handling the retrying logic is based on your success variable. So if this success variable is going to be passed, then we'll be printing a message like, let's do that. If your success is going to be true, then I'll be printing my step name passed on attempt. So when your test step is going to be passed, we are logging in a success message and we're going to stop the retrying when this variable is going to be true. Else, if your attempt is going to be lesser than your maximum retry, put a warning. This step is going to handle it when it is going to be success, but if it is failed when you're trying to send that request, what you'll have to do is you'll have to perform the remaining reattempt, which means your first is going to be in case if it is failed, then it has to try the second and third. So for that, we'll have to do the check whether the attempt is still lesser than your maximum retry. So at this point, it would be your retry will be having a holding 2 more times. So your attempt is going to be first attempt lesser than your maximum retry, which is 3. So we will be printing the message called retrying the test step and put your step name and your attempt plus 1. If not, just print an error. So log.error and say the test step failed after and mention how many retries it has done. So use your max retry variable and close your whole function and try to add this return null so that you don't get a pop-up. So when your test step passes, you will print this success message and it will not do any retry. But in case if it is failing, then it has to attempt the retry for second and third time and print the attempt plus 1. Or if it is failing, even after your maximum retry, then it has to just print like it has failed after the number of attempts that you wanted to retry. So let's try to run this. We have an error at 49, line 49. Okay, so this one should not be put inside. So it is assertions and I have missed an yes. I'm gonna clear this and let's try to run this script. Get it? So it is trying to execute your request on the attempt one. I'm trying to get a valid response for my both the sessions present in the get pet request. So it is not trying to attempt the second and third. In case if it is going to fail, then it will go for second and third attempt. Since it has passed on the first attempt itself, it is just printing that it has passed on attempt one and it is stopping the retry. So again, I'm trying to run them. So in the second time, it is failing on the first attempt, and so it is going for second attempt. And in the second attempt, it is getting a valid response, so it is stopping. So this is a simple script which will try to perform a retry mechanism when you're trying to hit any intermittent issue or any flaky issues in your API testing. So this approach would help you to address issues where you will have an unnecessary test failure, and that's how you handle your flaky behavior in API testing using Groovy script by SOAPUI. I hope you find this video helpful. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tutorials. Thanks for watching. Bye.